Hello friends. I can see 90% of my viewers don't subscribe while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Your support means everything to me. My name is Marina Voss, and this is the story of how losing everything I thought mattered taught me what truly did. The fluorescent lights of the law office buzzed overhead like angry wasps as I stared at the divorce papers spread across the mahogany table. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of building an empire together, reduced to legal jargon and asset divisions. But the numbers on those pages could not capture the real devastation. They could not quantify the mornings I woke up at 4 a.m. to review contracts while Victor slept peacefully beside me. They could not measure the weekends I sacrificed, the family gatherings I missed, the dreams I deferred so our company could survive its infancy. Victor Harrington sat across from me, his tailored suit crisp and confident, his wedding ring already absent from his finger. Beside him sat his attorney, a shark in designer clothing who spoke in clipped, professional tones about settlement terms and non-compete clauses. But my eyes kept drifting to the third person in the room. Celeste Moreau, 28 years old, blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a dress that cost more than most people made in a month. Victor's secretary. Victor's lover. Victor's replacement for me. She understood him better than I ever did. He had told me just 3 months earlier when I discovered their affair. The memory of those words still felt like shards of glass in my chest. I had found them together in his office after hours, her perched on the edge of his desk, his hands tangled in her hair. The scene was so cliché it would have been laughable if it had not been destroying my entire world. The betrayal was not just personal. Victor was systematically removing me from the company we had built together, the company that bore both our fingerprints on every major decision. Harrington Voss Industries had been our shared dream, born from late-night conversations over Chinese takeout and scribbled business plans on napkins. We had courted investors together, weathered financial storms as a team, celebrated every milestone as partners. Now the board of directors, filled with Victor's golf buddies and old fraternity brothers, nodded sagely as he painted me as an obstacle to progress. They whispered about my emotional instability, my inability to separate personal feelings from business decisions. They questioned my commitment, my vision, my very right to exist in the company I had helped create from nothing. The final insult came during the settlement negotiations. Victor wanted me to sign a non-compete agreement that would prevent me from working in our industry for 5 years. 5 years. He wanted to erase me so completely that I could not even use the expertise I had spent decades developing. Marina, Victor said, his voice dripping with false concern. You have to understand this is what is best for everyone. The company needs stability right now, and your continued involvement would only create confusion in the marketplace. I looked at him. This man I had loved, this man I had trusted with my heart, my dreams, my future. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his blue eyes cold and calculating. He had put on weight since our separation, the stress of managing both a company and a mistress apparently taking its toll. But his confidence remained intact, that arrogant certainty that he could control every situation, manipulate every outcome. You think I am going to just disappear? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt inside. I think you are going to be smart about this, he replied. Take the settlement. It is generous. More than generous. You will be comfortable for the rest of your life. Comfortable. He wanted to buy my silence, my absence, my complete surrender with money. As if the 15 years I had invested in building something meaningful could be reduced to a dollar amount and filed away like a completed transaction. I thought about all the nights I had stayed up reviewing financial projections while he attended networking events and client dinners. I remembered the investors I had personally convinced to fund our expansion, the strategic partnerships I had negotiated, the crises I had solved while he was traveling or distracted or, apparently, conducting his affair. Celeste shifted in her seat, her manicured fingers drumming against her designer handbag. She had been Victor's secretary for 3 years, hired straight out of business school with impressive credentials, but zero real-world experience. I had actually been the one to suggest we offer her the position, impressed by her sharp questions during the interview and her obvious intelligence. What a fool I had been. Marina, Victor continued. I know this is difficult, but we both know the industry. Starting over at 38 is not realistic. The settlement gives you options. You could travel, maybe write that book you always talked about, explore other interests. Other interests. As if my entire professional identity was just a hobby I could set aside when it became inconvenient for him. The lawyers exchanged glances, clearly eager to finalize the paperwork and move on to their next billable hours. Victor's attorney adjusted his glasses and began reading through the terms again, his voice a monotonous drone that filled the sterile conference room. But I was not listening anymore. Instead, I was remembering. I remembered the first time Victor and I had talked about starting our own company. We were both working for a large consulting firm, grinding through 60-hour weeks and watching our ideas get buried in corporate bureaucracy. Victor had the connections and the charm to attract clients. I had the strategic mind and the work ethic to deliver results. Together, we had thought we were unstoppable. I remembered our first office, a cramped space above a coffee shop where the espresso machine provided the soundtrack to our early business meetings. Victor handled sales and client relations while I developed the methodologies and operational frameworks that would become our signature approach. We were partners in every sense of the word. I remembered the night we landed our first major contract, a six-figure deal that would give us the credibility to compete with established firms. We had celebrated with champagne and takeout pizza, making love on the floor of our tiny office like teenagers drunk on possibility. I remembered our wedding, a small ceremony where we promised to support each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. Victor's vows included a pledge to always treat me as an equal partner, to never let success change the fundamental respect we shared. All of it felt like someone else's life now. The lawyer finished reading the terms and looked at me expectantly. Victor leaned back in his chair, supremely confident that I would sign. Celeste checked her phone, probably scheduling her next appointment or planning her next shopping expedition funded by the company I had helped build. I need some time to think, I said finally. Victor's expression darkened. Marina, we have been negotiating this for weeks. How much more time do you need? I will give you my answer tomorrow, I replied, standing up and gathering my purse. Tomorrow, Victor repeated, his voice tight with frustration. Fine. But understand that this offer will not be available indefinitely. The board is eager to move forward, and prolonged negotiations are not in anyone's best interest. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, but once I reached my car, the facade crumbled. I sat in the parking garage and cried until my makeup ran and my chest ached from sobbing. 15 years of my life, reduced to contract negotiations and settlement offers. 15 years of partnership, trust and shared dreams, destroyed by a man who had decided his secretary understood him better than his wife ever could. That night, I sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by boxes of belongings I had retrieved from the house Victor and I had shared. The space felt foreign and temporary, like a hotel room where I was waiting for my real life to begin. I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to imagine what came next. I could sign the settlement and disappear, take the money and start over somewhere else, maybe in a different industry where Victor's influence could not reach me. I could reinvent myself completely, leave behind the identity I had spent decades building. Or I could fight. I thought about the company Victor was so eager to protect from my influence. Marina Voss Industries specialized in strategic consulting for mid-sized companies looking to expand their market reach. Our client base included manufacturing firms, technology startups, and service companies across the Southeast. We had built a reputation for innovative approaches and measurable results. But I knew the company's weaknesses better than anyone. I knew which clients were dissatisfied with recent service levels. I knew which strategic partnerships were built on shaky foundations. I knew where Victor's ego had created blind spots that could become dangerous vulnerabilities. The wine was making me bold. Or maybe it was just clarity finally cutting through months of grief and confusion. I opened my laptop and began making lists. Clients who had expressed frustration with recent project outcomes. Investors who had grown tired of Victor's increasingly erratic decision-making. Industry contacts who respected my work, but had remained neutral during the divorce proceedings. Potential opportunities that Victor had dismissed, but that could be revolutionary in the right hands. By morning, I had the framework for a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. I called Victor's lawyer and scheduled another meeting. This time, I came prepared with a different kind of negotiation strategy. I will not be signing the non-compete agreement, I announced as soon as everyone was seated. Victor's face flushed red. Marina, be reasonable. You cannot just. I can and I will. I interrupted. But I am willing to discuss modified settlement terms. For the next 2 hours, we hammered out a new agreement. I would take a reduced financial settlement in exchange for the freedom to work in my chosen field. I would give up any claim to the Harrington Voss name and physical assets in exchange for the right to compete in the marketplace. Victor agreed, probably because he believed I posed no real threat to his empire. After all, what could one woman do against an established company with a loyal client base and strong market position? He was about to find out. I spent the next month planning my new venture with the same methodical approach I had once applied to our joint business strategy. I registered Voss Strategic Solutions as a limited liability company and secured a small office in the downtown business district. I reached out to former colleagues and industry contacts, carefully rebuilding relationships that had been strained by the divorce proceedings. Most importantly, I began identifying opportunities that Victor's arrogance had caused him to overlook. Marcus Weatherby was a manufacturing executive whose company had worked with Harrington Voss on a market expansion project the previous year. The results had been mediocre at best, and Marcus had made it clear that he felt the consulting team had not fully understood his industry's unique challenges. I invited him to lunch and listened carefully as he outlined his current business challenges. His company was struggling to adapt to new environmental regulations while maintaining profitability. Victor's team had recommended a generic cost-cutting approach that ignored the long-term strategic implications. What if I told you there was a way to turn regulatory compliance into a competitive advantage? I asked. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I would say you have my attention. Over the next hour, I outlined a comprehensive strategy that would position his company as an industry leader in sustainable manufacturing practices. Instead of viewing environmental regulations as an obstacle, we could use them as a catalyst for innovation and market differentiation. Marcus signed a consulting contract that afternoon. Within 6 months, I had signed 8 clients, most of whom had previous negative experiences with Victor's company. Word spread quickly through industry networks that Marina Voss was back in business and delivering results that justified her reputation. But I was not content to simply rebuild my career. I wanted to send a message. The opportunity came when Davidson Industries, one of Harrington Voss's largest clients, began having serious doubts about their current strategic direction. The company had followed Victor's recommendations for international expansion, but the results had been disappointing and expensive. James Davidson was a third-generation family business owner who valued relationships and long-term thinking over flashy presentations and empty promises. Victor had never understood how to connect with him on a personal level, treating him like just another revenue source rather than a partner in building something meaningful. I had known James for years and had actually been the primary relationship manager for his account before the divorce. When he called to ask if I would be interested in consulting on a confidential project, I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. James, I said during our first meeting, tell me what keeps you awake at night. For the next 2 hours, he outlined a vision for his company that Victor had dismissed as too ambitious and too risky. James wanted to position Davidson Industries as a leader in sustainable business practices, while maintaining the family values that had defined the company for 3 generations. It was exactly the kind of complex, long-term strategic challenge that I lived for. I developed a comprehensive plan that addressed every aspect of his concerns: market positioning, operational efficiency, stakeholder engagement, legacy preservation, and sustainable growth. The proposal was 200 pages long and represented 6 weeks of intensive research and analysis. James read every page. This is what I have been looking for, he told me. Victor never understood what this company means to me, to my family, to our community. You get it. Davidson Industries terminated their contract with Harrington Voss and signed an exclusive strategic consulting agreement with Voss Strategic Solutions. The contract was worth more than any single deal Victor's company had secured in the previous 2 years. But the real victory came 6 months later when James recommended my services to 3 other family-owned businesses in his network. Victor's Old Boys Club was discovering that relationships built on mutual respect and shared vision were more valuable than golf course connections and fraternity loyalty. Meanwhile, Victor's company was struggling. Celeste had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer, a decision that looked good in press releases, but created chaos in day-to-day operations. She had an MBA and impressive academic credentials, but she lacked the practical experience needed to manage complex client relationships and strategic initiatives. Industry gossip suggested that several key employees had left Harrington Voss, frustrated by the increasingly dysfunctional management structure. Victor was trying to handle too many responsibilities himself while maintaining his relationship with Celeste, and the quality of their work was suffering as a result. I could have felt vindicated by his struggles, but I was too busy building my own success to spend much time thinking about Victor's problems. My client base was growing steadily, and I was developing a reputation for innovative solutions and exceptional results. Then I received a phone call that changed everything. "Marina, this is Robert Chen." Robert was the chairman of Harrington Voss's board of directors, a venture capitalist with a reputation for ruthless efficiency and strategic thinking. He had been one of the original investors in our company and had watched our growth from startup to established firm. "Robert," I replied, surprised to hear from him after nearly 2 years of silence. "What can I do for you?" "I think the question is what we can do for each other," he said. "I would like to meet with you privately. There are some developments at Harrington Voss that I think would interest you." We met at an upscale restaurant downtown, far from the business district where we might be recognized by mutual acquaintances. Robert looked tired, older than I remembered, but his eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had made him one of the most successful investors in the region. "Marina," he began, "I am going to be direct with you because I respect your intelligence, and because we do not have time for diplomatic language. Victor is destroying the company." I sipped my wine and waited for him to continue. "The Davidson contract was just the beginning. We have lost 3 more major clients in the past 6 months. Employee turnover is at an all-time high. Our profit margins are shrinking, and our reputation in the marketplace is suffering." "I am sorry to hear that," I said, though we both knew I was not particularly sorry at all. "The board is concerned," Robert continued. "Very concerned. We have investors to answer to, employees to protect, and a responsibility to salvage what we can of the company's value." "What does this have to do with me?" Robert smiled for the first time since we had sat down. "I think you know exactly what this has to do with you. Your company is thriving. Your clients are happy. Your reputation has never been stronger. Meanwhile, the company you helped build is falling apart under Victor's leadership." I set down my wine glass and looked directly at him. "Are you asking me to come back?" "I am asking you to consider it. As CEO, with full authority to restructure operations, rebuild client relationships, and restore the company's market position." The proposal was audacious and tempting and completely unexpected. After everything Victor had done to push me out, the board wanted me to return as his replacement. "What about Victor?" I asked. "Victor would be removed from his leadership position. The board has lost confidence in his ability to manage the company effectively. His relationship with Celeste has created conflicts of interest that are impossible to ignore, and his strategic decisions have been consistently poor." "And Celeste?" Robert's expression hardened. "Celeste would be terminated immediately. Her promotion was a mistake that the board should have prevented." I thought about Victor's smug confidence during our divorce negotiations. He had been so certain that he held all the power, that I would simply disappear, and leave him to enjoy his new life with his secretary. He had underestimated me then, just as he had underestimated the consequences of his choices. "I need time to think about this," I told Robert. "Of course. But Marina, I want you to understand something. This is not just about revenge or vindication. This is about saving a company that employs 43 people, and serves dozens of clients who depend on our expertise. Whatever happened between you and Victor personally, the company deserves a chance to survive." He was right, and I knew it. Harrington Voss Industries was bigger than Victor's ego or my wounded pride. There were employees who had families to support, clients who needed reliable service, and a legacy worth preserving. I spent the next week considering the offer from every possible angle. Returning to Harrington Voss would mean giving up the independence I had fought so hard to establish. It would mean working with some of the same board members who had supported Victor during the divorce. It would mean facing Victor directly and managing the inevitable media attention that would follow such a dramatic corporate restructuring. But it would also mean completing the circle in a way that felt cosmically satisfying. I would not just be rebuilding my career. I would be reclaiming the company that should have been mine all along. I called Robert on a Friday afternoon and accepted his offer. The transition happened quickly and quietly. The board scheduled an emergency meeting for the following Monday morning. Victor was told that there would be a discussion about new strategic initiatives and operational changes. He had no idea what was waiting for him. I arrived at the Harrington Voss offices 30 minutes before the meeting, using the back entrance to avoid being seen by employees who might recognize me. The building looked the same as when I had left, but everything felt different. I was no longer the betrayed wife being pushed out of her own company. I was the returning CEO, armed with board approval and a mandate to restore the company to its former strength. Robert met me in the conference room and briefed me on the final details. The board had prepared termination paperwork for both Victor and Celeste. Security had been quietly notified to escort them from the building if necessary. A company-wide announcement about new leadership would be distributed immediately after the meeting. "Are you ready for this?" Robert asked. I adjusted my jacket and checked my reflection in the conference room windows. I looked professional, confident, and completely in control. Inside, my heart was racing with anticipation and nervousness, but I had learned to channel those emotions into focused determination. "I have been ready for this for 2 years," I replied. Victor entered the conference room at exactly 9 o'clock, followed by Celeste and the rest of the executive team. He looked relaxed and confident, probably expecting another routine board meeting where his leadership would be rubber-stamped and his decisions would be approved without serious question. His expression changed the moment he saw me. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, his voice rising with shock and anger. "Please take a seat, Victor," Robert replied calmly. "We have some important matters to discuss." Victor remained standing, his face flushing red as he processed the situation. Celeste looked confused and frightened, her eyes darting between me and Victor as she tried to understand what was happening. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, addressing the room formally. "The board of directors has been conducting a comprehensive review of company performance and strategic direction. Based on our findings, we have made some difficult but necessary decisions about leadership changes." Victor finally sat down, his hands gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles were white. "Robert, if this is some kind of joke." "This is not a joke, Victor. The board has lost confidence in your ability to lead this company effectively. Your strategic decisions have resulted in significant client losses, declining profitability, and deteriorating employee morale." "That is ridiculous," Victor protested. "We have had some challenges, but every company goes through difficult periods. The fundamentals are strong, and our long-term prospects." "The fundamentals are not strong," I interrupted, speaking for the first time since entering the room. "Client satisfaction scores have dropped by 30% in the past 18 months. Employee turnover has increased by 45%. 3 major contracts have been terminated, and 2 potential clients have explicitly cited concerns about management competence." Victor stared at me with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You have been monitoring our performance?" "I have been succeeding in the marketplace while you have been failing," I replied evenly. "The industry is small enough that everyone knows everyone else's business. Your problems have not been secrets." Robert cleared his throat and continued with the formal presentation. "The board has asked Marina Voss to return to the company as Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. She will have full authority to restructure operations, rebuild client relationships, and implement whatever changes are necessary to restore the company's market position. This is insane, Victor said, his voice cracking with emotion. You cannot just replace me with my ex-wife. The conflict of interest issues alone. The conflict of interest issues were created by your relationship with your subordinate, Robert replied coldly. The board should have addressed this situation months ago, but we hoped you would resolve it professionally. Instead, you promoted Ms. Moreau to a position for which she was clearly unqualified and allowed personal considerations to compromise your business judgment. Celeste spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. What does this mean for me? I looked at her directly, remembering the young woman I had once recommended for employment, the ambitious professional who had somehow become the catalyst for destroying my marriage and derailing my career. It means your employment with this company is terminated, I said simply. Effective immediately. She burst into tears, which might have moved me once, but now simply felt like delayed consequences finally arriving at their destination. Victor stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is revenge, pure and simple. You are using the board to settle personal scores, and you are going to destroy everything we built together. Victor, I said, standing up to face him directly, I am not destroying anything. I am fixing what you broke. Security appeared at the conference room door, summoned by Robert's discreet signal. Two professional, polite men who would escort Victor and Celeste from the building with as much dignity as possible under the circumstances. Your personal belongings will be packed and delivered to your home address, Robert informed them. All company property, including laptops, phones, and vehicles, must be returned immediately. HR will be in contact regarding final payroll and benefit arrangements. Victor looked around the room one last time, his eyes stopping on each board member, as if he could somehow appeal to their loyalty or friendship. But the decision had been made, and everyone in the room knew it was the right one. This is not over, Marina, he said as the security guards approached his chair. Yes, Victor, I replied calmly, it is. I watched them leave, feeling a complex mixture of emotions that I had not fully anticipated. There was satisfaction, certainly, and a sense of justice being served. But there was also sadness for what we had once shared, and what had been irretrievably lost. After the room cleared, Robert and I spent the next 2 hours reviewing the transition plan. I would officially start as CEO the following Monday, giving me the weekend to prepare for what would undoubtedly be a challenging period of rebuilding and restructuring. Marina, Robert said as we finished our planning session, I want you to know that this decision was not made lightly. The board believes you are the right person to lead this company forward, but we also understand that this situation is unprecedented and complicated. I appreciate your confidence, I replied, and I want you to know that I intend to approach this role with complete professionalism. Whatever personal history exists between Victor and me, my only focus will be on restoring this company to its full potential. That weekend, I prepared for the most important challenge of my professional life. I reviewed every aspect of the company's current operations, identified immediate priorities for stabilization and improvement, and developed a communication strategy for employees, clients, and industry partners. Monday morning arrived with the weight of possibility and responsibility. I entered the Harrington Voss offices as CEO, carrying the authority to reshape the company according to my vision and values. The first item on my agenda was a company-wide meeting to address the leadership changes and outline my plans for moving forward. 43 employees gathered in the main conference room, their faces reflecting a mixture of curiosity, concern, and cautious optimism. Good morning, I began, looking out at the team of professionals who would determine whether this transition succeeded or failed. My name is Marina Voss, and I am honored to be returning to this company as your new CEO. I spent the next hour outlining my vision for operational excellence, client satisfaction, and employee development. I acknowledged the challenges we faced while emphasizing the opportunities that lay ahead. Most importantly, I made it clear that every employee would be evaluated based on their performance and contribution to the company's success, regardless of their previous relationships or loyalties. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Many employees expressed relief that the uncertainty and dysfunction of recent months would be replaced by clear leadership and strategic direction. Several team members approached me individually to share their concerns about previous management decisions and their enthusiasm for the changes I was implementing. Over the next 6 months, I systematically addressed every aspect of the company's operations. I rebuilt relationships with alienated clients, recruited talented professionals to replace employees who had left during Victor's tenure, and implemented new systems and procedures designed to improve efficiency and quality control. The results spoke for themselves. Client satisfaction scores returned to historical highs. Employee retention improved dramatically. New business development accelerated as our reputation for excellence was restored. But the most satisfying moment came 9 months after my return, when I received a phone call from Davidson Industries. "Marina," James said, "I wanted to let you know that we have decided to move our strategic consulting contract back to Voss Industries." "That is wonderful news, James. May I ask what influenced your decision?" "Simple," he replied. "You are there now. The company has the leadership and vision it was missing. We want to be part of whatever you are building." I hung up the phone and looked around my office, the CEO suite that bore a brass nameplate reading Marina Voss, Chief Executive Officer. The view from the corner windows overlooked the downtown business district, where I had struggled to rebuild my career after losing everything I thought mattered. Victor had replaced me with his secretary, believing that youth and attractiveness were more valuable than experience and partnership. He had been wrong about that, just as he had been wrong about so many other things. I had replaced him in the boardroom, in the CEO's office, and in the respect of everyone who mattered in our industry. But more importantly, I had replaced the woman I used to be with someone stronger, more independent, and more confident in her own worth. The intercom on my desk buzzed with a call from my assistant. "Ms. Voss, you have the Strategic Planning Committee meeting in 10 minutes. "Thank you," I replied. "I will be right there." I gathered my materials and walked toward the conference room, where 15 of the industry's most successful professionals were waiting to discuss the future of Voss Industries. They were there because they respected my vision, trusted my judgment, and believed in the company we were building together. For the first time in years, I finally felt understood. Not by someone else, but by myself. And that made all the difference. If this story of ultimate revenge and redemption inspired you, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of triumph over betrayal. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you never miss stories of people who turned their lowest moments into their greatest victories. Your support helps us bring you more amazing true stories of resilience, revenge, and remarkable comebacks.